social studies teachers. My name is Kelly and I'm going to talk about one of the strategies we use in our social studies units. This strategy is called thinking like a social scientist. Let's start by figuring out what it means to think like a social scientist. When we ask our students to think like a social scientist, we are asking them to use a skill set that is similar to what a historian, geographer, behavioral scientist, political scientist, etc. would use in their career. We can compare this to when we ask students to use the scientific method in science class or the writing process in language arts. These are skills that help students better understand how to gain, process, and communicate information in a way that is specific to a content area. Making observations, asking questions, researching, and communicating results are all a part of thinking like a social scientist. Here are the social scientists that your students will encounter during the social studies curriculum. Students in kindergarten through 5th grade will learn about and ask questions like an economist, geographer, historian, and political scientist. Starting in 6th grade, students will also learn about behavioral scientists and a financially literate person. Be sure to spend some time learning about each of the social scientists prior to implementing them in your classroom. The Thinking Like a Social Scientist cards are a great resource to use. These can be found in many of your unit plans, on the curriculum website, or by contacting your curriculum facilitator. Social scientists are introduced in the younger grades within the various units. Once a social scientist has been introduced, continue to reference them in order to continue developing that skill set. When you look at a new image or a new piece of text, consider having the students ask a question like one of the social scientists. If you're looking at a map, the most obvious social science to reference would be a geographer. If you're looking at a timeline, I bet students could come up with questions that a historian would ask. If you work with older students, consider spending a class or two reviewing what each social scientist does and the types of questions they ask. Up next, I'm going to walk you through two different ideas for practicing thinking like a social scientist. The first activity is simply called Thinking Like a Social Scientist. There's an elementary version and a secondary version, with the secondary starting at 6th grade, since that is when the Thinking Like a Social Scientist cards update. In both versions, students will analyze an image and generate questions that each social scientist might ask. The image in this particular activity is of an accessible parking space. Students might generate questions such as, where is this located? Geographer. How does this affect the lives of those with disabilities? Behavioral scientist. What laws protect this parking space? Political scientist. Have there always been accessible parking spaces? Historian. You can extend this project by researching some of the questions that students will come up with to find out more about a topic. Modify this activity by using an image related to the content being learned in the unit or as a warm-up before the unit begins. A second possible activity is the exploring activity. Explore different parts of the school building and figure out which social scientists would be interested in it or what questions they might ask. So some places you could explore would be the lunchroom. You could look at some classroom rules, find accessible entrances, lockers, and bathrooms, look for fire exits, take a look at a school map, explore the library, and check out the hallway displays. There's lots of different things that the various social scientists would be curious about. Thank you for watching this video about how to think like a social scientist. Please take the time to incorporate this learning into your classroom. There are many ways to practice this skill set beyond the two suggestions I provided in this video. Please reach out to your PLC leader, instructional coach, or curriculum facilitator if you have any questions or would like some more information or support.